morning. Welcome everyone. I appreciate you coming out to hear this story. Just in conjunction with this presentation today, we do have a disclaimer here that should be read in parallel to this presentation. I am, as Eric mentioned, the Chief Executive Officer, President, and also the founder of Otis. We're developing gold projects in the state of Idaho in the United States. We have 4 projects undergo. The project that I want to talk to you about today is something called the Kilgore Gold Project. And I'm focused on this project, number one, because it has a fairly large resource and it's a growing resource. And it started to generate some strong interest in the markets from strategic investors and institutional investors, and it's really the cornerstone of our company. And what we have at Kilgore, and I want you to keep this in the back of your mind, we do have about 820,000 ounces of 43-101 compliant resources. However, you'll notice our grade is low. The grade on this deposit on a 2012 resource is about 0.6 grams per ton. A couple of things to keep in mind. This is an open pit heap leach gold project. It is a low strip ratio. It's got very good metallurgy. Probably most importantly, in 2015 and 2016, we've been stepping out to the north of our deposit as well as down underneath the existing deposit, and we've been experiencing intercepts that are much thicker than the average size of the existing 2012 resource and of much higher grade. And that's what I want you to keep in the back of your mind and really the focus of the whole story here. Another project that we get no value for at Otis, but I do want to just talk about it for a couple of minutes. It's our Oakley project. It's a gold-silver project. We have 100% interest in it. There is a small resource on it, 160,000 ounces. There has been some interesting drilling out there recently. We got about 123 meters of 0.7 grams per ton. So the deposit does have some interesting growth potential, but what we're really excited about, we just started a field program out at Oakley a couple of weeks ago, and we're focused on a target there called Matrix Creek. It's about 350 meters by 200 meters wide, and we've done some sampling out there that's averaged about 1.7 grams per ton gold equivalent. And what's really exciting is there's a lot of silver out there. We've had silver hits up to over 300 grams per ton. As we speak, we're in the process of doing a program of 1,350 soil samples out there and 40 stream sediment samples. We'll be doing some ground mag out there. By the end of this year, we'll have a really good idea of how to approach this project from a development perspective. But again, the focus of what I want to talk to you about is our Kilgore project. So let's talk about briefly about Idaho. Many of you may not be familiar with it, but it's a very friendly mining state. There's a lot of activity in the state, both historically and today. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. Up here in the northern part of the state, something we call the Idaho Panhandle is the Silver Valley. Very high-grade underground silver mines. You'll know the name Hecla. They operate the Lucky Friday mine. Lucky Friday just sunk the deepest shaft in the United States at 650 feet. Down in the southeastern portion of the state, we have the phosphate belt, very large open pit phosphate mines. Large companies like Agrium, Monsanto, J.R. Simplot are operating these mines. Thompson Creek in the center of the state, it's the world's largest open pit moly mine. We also have a company that you may be familiar with, Midas Gold, developing the Stibnite project, which is another large open pit gold mine that's going through a large permitting process. From the gold side of things, long history of gold mining in the States, a lot of alluvial and placer mining historically, but there's also been a number of very successful open pit heap leach gold mines. Specifically, you had the Bear Track mine owned by Meridian Gold, which is now owned by Yamana. They took about 650,000 ounces out of that mine. And then the Black Pine mine, which was operated by a company called Pegasus Gold, took about 450,000 ounces out of there. The reason I mention these two mines is that they have similar styles of deposits to what we have at Kilgore, and they were projects that were discovered, developed, permitted, they went into production, and they went through successful closures, and they're good news stories in the mining front in the state of Idaho. So really lots going on in Idaho. Again, it's a very mining friendly state, and it's been a fantastic place for us to operate. To give you a little bit of idea about our company, a little flavor here, 160 million shares outstanding. We've got about $7 million in the bank, so we're fully funded for all of our exploration and overhead for the next 12 months. Management and directors, officers own about 26% of the company at this time. Probably most importantly from an investor perspective, we frankly struggled out in the market over the past couple of years with the downturn in the market, but I've been very successful in raising capital out of the United Kingdom. So as part of our shareholder base, we have about 35% of our stock held out of the UK by high net worth individuals. And more recently, and it's been a big step forward for our company, in February, a large Canadian mining company, Agnico Eagle, acquired a 9.9% position in our company at 35 cents a share. To give you some context, we're trading at about 30 cents a share right now. So that was a very positive development for our company and has created a lot more interest in the company from the market. We've had some institutions starting to buy stock in the open market, and just as importantly, in terms of analyst coverage, I can tell you that just last week, Canadian operation PI Financial just initiated coverage on our company. So we're really excited to have some conventional research on our stock, and most importantly, the fact that we've got this strong financial partner in Agnico to help support the development of Kilgore is fantastic. As Eric kindly mentioned, corporate finance and investment banking, don't need to go into my background. The guys who you're investing with, Mitch Bernardi and John Carden. Gray hair, long history in the western U.S. mining community, focused on gold. They've got deposits to their credit. They've got deposits that have gone into production. For instance, John was the identified and developed the Lamefoot deposit, which was the highest grade, lowest cost producer in the history of Echo Bay mines. They're great guys to have on my team. Two other people I want to mention, Roger Norwich, he's one of our directors. He's based out of the UK. He was a founder of a company called Rio Alto, built that company up and sold it to Tahoe Resources. And a bunch of the shareholders that supported him in that transaction are now shareholders in our company. We've also been working on, as we moved into more from an exploration to a development phase, we've been bringing in people like Eric Klepfer, who's focused on permitting, and Michael Vint, who works for Endeavor Financial, a large mining finance house. He's a mining engineer, and he's really focused on doing all of the technical review for mining projects for Endeavor, and he's helping us out on that end of our business. So history of Kilgore. This is actually a project that produced historically. In the 1930s, this produced as a high-grade underground gold mining operation. Back in those days, the gold would have been found in the creeks and streams at the bottom of our project. The old-timers moved up the hill and found where some high-grade chutes came out at the surface. There's 15 old adits that are collapsed on the project. There's an old tram line. So that's how things got going at Kilgore in the 1930s. Second World War came along. The United States stopped all production of metals other than strategic metals used in the war effort. And people kind of forgot about Kilgore. Fast forward to the late 80s, early 90s, a number of large companies came along and started to develop the open pit heap leach potential out at Kilgore, the bulk tonnage story. And the main one, the most important one that was out there, Echo Bay Mines, they were out there from kind of 93 to 96, and Kilgore was actually going to be their next production story. It was a small mine story, 45,000 ounces a year. The grade on the identified pod that they were going to start mining was about 1.28 grams per ton. Relatively short mine life, but back in those days, that's how mines got going. That was in a $350 gold environment. Unfortunately, the price of gold at that time dropped down to $250, and Echo Bay walked away from all of their development projects, including Kilgore, but they had completed a whole range of detailed engineering work, metallurgical work, etc. on the project. So keep that in the back of your mind. The other things to keep in mind, we own this project 100% and there's no royalty burden on it, which is a strong position to be in. The other thing is we're very good access to this project. We're just off of a major interstate I-15, about 50 miles off of that road. You can drive a two-wheel drive vehicle right up to our project. We've got rail that runs parallel to the interstate. We've got power to the bottom of the hill. So that's coupled with the fact that we're in a place called Clark County, which is, to give you some context, it's the size of Rhode Island, but there's only 930 people in the state, and it's also, or in the county, and it's a very, it's a low-income area of the United States, which has some positive benefits from a permitting perspective. So just, I won't get into a lot of detail on the geology here, but this is a volcanic hosted epithermal gold system. And what you're looking at here, these green circles, are a string of volcanic calderas which had their origin at something called the North American hotspot. And these, the oldest calderas, which are 14 or 15 million years of age in the northern part of Nevada and the eastern part of Oregon, are the home to many well-known volcanic hosted epithermal gold systems that have produced historically and continue to produce today. What we have at Kilgore is the same thing as you got in the northern part of Nevada. It's just much younger rocks. As I mentioned, we're on the northeast margin of something called the Kilgore caldera. So this is a very large volcanic caldera. We're right on the northeast margin of it. This is a caldera that's about probably 60 miles across, so it's a very large caldera setting. The main host rock out here, again, I'm not going to get a lot into the geology, but the 820,000 ounces that we have is hosted largely in something called lithic tuff. And where we see a lot of growth potential in our deposit is in an underlying sandstone unit called the Aspen Formation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So why did Agnico get excited about this project? Well, this is just a grade thickness map of our deposit. And what you see here is as we started to move up to the northern end of our deposit and do step-out drilling in 2015, we started to hit hits in something called the crab claw. You'll see really strong hits. The best one was 94.5 meters or 4.2 grams per ton. Keep in mind our deposit's 0.6 grams per ton, and the average thickness of it is about 50 meters. So we were stepping into some areas where the grades were much better, and some of these intercepts were thicker than what we had been experiencing in the main part of the deposit. So that caused us to start getting quite excited, and the market started to get a little bit more interested in what we were doing. And when we went, this is a cross-section through this area that we call the crab claw, where we got those higher grade intercepts. And this is what we found. This underlying sandstone unit had been up-faulted in something called a horse block. And all those hits ran across the main controlling fault out here called the Northwest Fault, and all ended in open-ended mineralization in this underlying Aspen Formation. So we went and did some work on, this is a long section through the deposit, and what we started to realize is the people who drilled this deposit, Echo Bay specifically in the 90s, they would drill through the lithic tuff, and when they would hit this underlying sandstone unit, they would stop, even though you can see all of these drill holes ended in open-ended mineralization in this underlying unit. Why? It's a $350 gold environment. They were looking for a shallow gold deposit, so 500 feet kind of they would go down and they'd stop drilling. The other thing, you get better gold recoveries up here, about 80 to 85% at 1.5-inch crush. The metallurgy isn't quite as good down here, so that's the other reason they didn't look at this. But because of the higher grade nature and these thick intercepts, last year we went out and did a 10,000 meter drill program focused on targeting this underlying Aspen corridor. And without going through all of these results, we just basically had 100-meter plus intercepts of averaging 1 to 2 grams per ton. And this whole area, which is about 450 meters long by about 135 meters wide and anywhere from 65 to about 125 meters thick, up at the north end, 85 meters of 2.5 grams. Down at the south end, 70 meters of 2 grams. Those were the last holes that we drilled at each end of this drill pattern. And again, what we found, and this is the big story that got Agnico interested, was this whole Aspen Formation is really coming together. So this is mineralization that's underneath the existing 800,000 ounces, and it's what's carrying the future of this deposit. The second thing that got them excited about the deposit was the fact that this is just looking at our whole claim block. It's about 37 square kilometers. This red blob is the deposit. This is the main controlling fault out here, the Northwest Fault. You'll see a couple of cross faults or radial faults at the confluence of the Northwest Fault and these cross faults. That's where you get your highest grade mineralization at Kilgore. People were never excited about some of the other targets that we had out at Kilgore. Why? Because I was sitting on an 800,000 ounce, 0.6 gram per ton resource, and people were concerned, well, that's all you're going to find is more 0.6 gram per ton stuff. Now that we've been able to show that the deposit is increased in size, and most importantly, the grade of the deposit is going to be coming up, these other targets start to become much more compelling. And so Gold Ridge, Crossback Bridge, they've got the exact same geophysical, geotechnical, basically the exact same geologic features that we have at Kilgore. And these targets are starting to become much more interesting to the market. Specifically up at Gold Ridge last fall, this is our deposit. We did a ground mag survey from our deposit all the way up to Gold Ridge. And what you're seeing here with these lines is they're all the identification of new fault structures that we were previously unaware of. So they're parallel to the main Northwest Fault, and they're also cross faults that are parallel to the established cross faults. So this lattice work of fault that is tied together with strong gold anomalies that are in the soil, some arsenic anomalies, and some other things that are out there are really good signatures that there's a strong potential for mineralization up at Gold Ridge. We see the same thing down at what we call Prospect Ridge. The other really important thing about this deposit, it's the last thing I really have to say, when you walk away from this presentation, think about our metallurgy. Most junior companies don't talk about metallurgy. It's always too early for us to look at metallurgy. We want the deposit to get bigger. That's usually because there's problems with the metallurgy. That is not the case at Kilgore. It's one of the best features of this deposit historically. The gold comes out of this ore with cyanide leaching both very quickly and at large crush sizes, and that's going to lower your mining, it's going to lower your capex, it's going to lower your mining costs, and it's a great feature of this deposit. So that's the close of my presentation. I mean, what you got in terms of walking away from this is we have 100% interest in the Kilgore Gold Project. We've got an extremely strong financial partner and mining partner with Agnico Eagle. We're fully funded for all our exploration for 2017. We're just starting up a $4.3 million exploration program out at Kilgore, 8,000 plus meters of drilling to expand that Kilgore deposit. We're going to be doing ground mag over the entire project block. There's just a lot of work that's going on. And the other thing to keep in mind, you've got some of the strongest drill results that were bulk tonnage drill results that were drilled in the United States last year, and we're excited about delivering some more of that kind of drilling to the market this year. So thanks very much for your interest in coming out this morning. I'm around for the rest of the day. If you have any more questions, please drop by and say hello. I'd love to chat with you. Thank you very much.